Stallion, live events change lives.
No doubt about it. That's why we want you to join us for a live event here in Birmingham, January 6th through the 8th. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/live.
Hey, we're going to give you access to our network and the other people within the community so that you can have the exact blueprint on how to become financially free, the same one the Stallion and I have been using to post our passive income report every single month. Don't miss this opportunity. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/live. Don't start the new year with a goal. Start the new year with a plan to accomplish your goal.
Russ, today's podcast is literally the story of the inner circle and how it can take people from zero, like no experience, to graduation to the passive income mastermind. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, I think because we had 3 members of our inner circle who now are in the passive income mastermind, you literally just made the connection. So I like the way you did that, Stallion. That was good.
But break this down for me. Okay. Somebody says, I hear you guys talk about the inner circle. It sounds cool, but like, I don't understand the tenets of it. Like what is actually going on within that? That's what made me think of this podcast. Like,
well, so here's the key. I think the big thing is that we run life in our little silos, trying to get as far as we possibly can by ourselves, right? And what's the old saying? If you want to go fast, you go solo, but if you want to go far, you go together.
Right.
And too often times people come to us solo and they're running fast and maybe they're the first person in their group to reach out and say, hey, I want to start this infinite banking concept. I've heard you guys talk about it. Hey, I want to start building some passive income. I've heard you guys interview people around this and you guys post on your passive income report every month. But I don't know what to do from that point. Like I got this far, right? Now get me in the car and take me the rest of the way. Like, expose me, give me experience, give me insight, give me motivation, give me accountability.
Right.
And that is what our masterminds do, right? The inner circle and the passive income mastermind are just 2 different masterminds we have. The first one are for those who typically have more time than money, right? It's usually where I'm coming there. Not like I have an abundant amount of time, because I mean, most of us are all working 40, 50, 60-hour weeks. We don't have lots of time, but we're like, man, I'm willing to find ways to do things, to hack, maybe to start a side hustle, to moonlight in the passive income areas on my off hours and during the weekends in order to get more time back in the future, right? To get that cash flow going. Where our passive income mastermind are for those who typically have already solved for the money thing, but just like the others, they don't have time either. But what they're willing to do is trade that money to buy back time, where they start investing in deals that create passive income, and they're hacking other people around them's experience. They start building their own funds. So now they're using the expertise of investing, and they're raising funds from other people who maybe don't have that can help them get into bigger and better opportunities and speed up the time frame. Those are the 2 things. But more importantly, Stallion, I think what we see in this interview is how when you get around like-minded people, you motivate yourself, you challenge yourself, you compete with others for success.
That's right. Yeah. You're talking about Matthew Hammond, Brent Noblitt, and Jonathan Day, and how these are not professional speakers, guys. These guys are not on stages selling anything. In fact, out of the goodness of their heart, they're just sharing their story because it's motivational, right? They go from education, like the very beginning of this is being exposed to ideas. That's what the inner circle is, but it doesn't end there, right? It doesn't end with information. You can get information from listening to the podcast. You can get information from reading a book. But what happens after that is now there's a mastermind component, right? Where now we start to share those ideas, our experience, the experience of others, the motivation of others, as you mentioned, the competition that's behind it that will help keep us always looking ahead and trying to get one step further. And then the last part is action, because information, masterminding, getting that experience, it creates safety that now you can run. It doesn't mean it's perfect. Like there's no given that investments are without risk. That's not what we're talking about. But when you take your information and you have that input from others, it creates enough safety that now you feel like I can take action on this idea and I can move forward fast. And what you're going to hear from these guys today is the passion behind it, the motivation of what got them there, and lastly, the results that they were able to do in a very short amount of time. We're talking within a couple of years, these guys have accomplished so much. And that's what we want for you. If you have not taken the chance to meet with one of our coaches to talk about your own financial journey, I want to call you to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call. Now, let's not hold back anymore from this interview, Russ. Let's get in here with Jonathan, Brent, and Matthew.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome, Wealth Without Wall Street tribe. This is a first, okay? This is a first where we have 3 guests simultaneously. You're in for a treat to hear from Matthew Hammond, Jonathan Day, and Brent Noblitt. Welcome, guys. So glad to have you on.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Man, see, this is already interesting because they don't even know, like, should I jump in yet or should I not? You guys got to be more aggressive. Like, just do what I do to Joey, mute him and start talking. That's
over
the objective.
him. That's the goal. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna start with the seasoned guest here, the person who was on episode 207, Matthew Hammond. We heard his story. If you didn't, go back and listen to it. But I want to start with you, Matthew, because this conversation happened because you were learning from one of these other guys, but then sharing what you were learning with both of them. So let's talk a little bit about your investment journey and why is it so important, do you believe, to create passive income in your life?
Man, passive income is so important. The more and more I learned on my journey, the more and more I realized that my time was not my own. I was working for the man, so to speak. And although I do love the people I work for, the fact still remains that I do have to answer to somebody other than myself when it comes to time freedom. And so as I started my investment journey, passive income was my number one priority in order to regain that time freedom back for myself and for my family, so that I could spend more time with them, more time doing the things that I enjoy doing, and not being handcuffed to a desk and having to trade my time for money. And so that's been my journey up to this point over the last, I'd say, 2 years now.
Perfect. How about for you, Brent? What would you say? Why was passive income so important for you?
Yeah, I would say probably, I guess, what was the catalyst for me to start looking probably was around 10 years ago when we had our first kid and when we had to go drop him off at daycare for the first time, and just kind of, felt really bad that both me and my wife were having to go off to work and leave him with someone else to take care of him for the day. And so that kind of started my journey then. And it's been obviously 10 years later, and I'm only just now close to, reaching the financial freedom. So I'd say that was the catalyst and, just what really, I guess, started it for me. And then we'll stop there.
What about you?
Yeah, for me, it started about 7 years ago. We moved to Greenville, our hometown, current hometown, and started planting a church. I'm a pastor, and it was an adventure, and it's also a venture in a business sense too. So it's kind of a startup kind of deal. We were very financially strapped for several years. God always provided, but we were just at a point where I was just kind of throwing my hands up, like, what should I do now? I've just got to do something. And went through a couple, iterations of, maybe working another job or doing some of those things. But I just had always thought about the idea of real estate or some form of passive income. And it seemed like the pairing was perfect. If I could do something where I could work on a project for a couple of months, that's, what it felt like in my head at the time. If I could work on a project for a couple of months and then have passive income, a residual income was the language I used at the time, then I could just be about doing what I felt like God called me to do during the day, and the income, work on one thing and the income come in from somewhere else. So I guess kind of in a nutshell, that's where I'm at on the passive income spectrum, on the reason why I support it.
Yeah, no, that's super, super interesting to hear everybody's perspective, because it sounds like in your case, Jonathan, it was more about seeking something that you're passionate about without having to be concerned about the income. And Matthew and Brent, you guys were both kind of focused on the family aspect, like, seeing time as being the biggest, it's being taken from you on a day-to-day basis. Let me ask you this: what was something that you tried early on in light of that you wouldn't recommend? Like somebody could learn from you. Matthew, we'll come back to you on that question.
Well, starting out, before I really kind of got my feet truly wet in the investment journey, I was really I had this shiny object syndrome where anytime an investment opportunity came along, I was immediately attracted to it without actually doing any kind of due diligence. And sometimes, with my personality, I'm very analytical, but at the same time, I was very aggressive in my ambitions. And so sometimes there were some investments that I may have jumped into prematurely without doing the proper due diligence. And I got burned on a few of those here and there. I mean, nothing that I couldn't recover from, but it was definitely a learning experience. And now as I'm by no means an investment expert in any shape or form, but I'm definitely more experienced over the last few years in my investment journey that I'm able to I prioritize that due diligence so that I can actually truly analyze an investment, not just the investment itself, but the people behind the investment, so that I can make sure that it's not just a good fit for me financially, but it's also a good fit for me with my investment personality as well.
Awesome. Brent, what about you? Something you would not recommend people follow your footsteps?
Well, of course, we can always start with stock investing.
Let's beat up on some Wall Street today, guys. Let's do it.
It's never a bad time to do that. Before I, found you guys and really got on this journey, that's, I did what everybody else does. Dump your money in the 401k, and that's what you do, and just kind of don't think about it. I looked at long-term rentals for a long time, and I just never could pull the trigger on anything there. Just the numbers never made sense to me. And, when it came to sort of passive investing, that was really all I knew at the time before I really got in and started learning about other options that were out there that just kind of seemed to be, if anybody else was doing anything besides investing in the stock market, it was long-term rentals. And so that's kind of what I looked at. And it just, for me, the numbers just never penciled out right.
All right. So you heard it here. Brent Noblitt says, do not put money in a 401k. All right. Thank you, Brent. Jonathan, what's something you would say, don't do this, don't do as I did?
Well, they actually took both of my answers. So if I'm going to go with something different, something maybe off the wall, is it's a good and a bad thing. I would not recommend buying a short-term rental in Orlando. That is unless you know the market, just don't do it. The people that you're dealing with, the expectations of your clientele, they're going to Disney, they're going to Universal. And so you can get yourself in a situation where it's hard to please people. Although
so
you're riding the market up, then you sell it and you make some money, then I guess I would totally recommend it. That's the way it worked out for me.
So what I heard you say is that the market in Orlando, people have an expectation of what Disney looks like. To me, I'm going to equate that to when we started doing YouTube videos. Initially, my expectation was, oh, our YouTube videos need to be like the movies or the commercials you watch on TV that are so professionally produced. But then that was obviously not the reality that we were creating. And so you're saying people have that perception in their mind of I'm expect everything to be Disney-esque or Universal-esque, and then they show up to your short-term rental, and if it doesn't meet that expectation, now they're giving you bad reviews, they're complaining. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and just from a marketing standpoint to begin with, your Airbnb or your Vrbo photos are so much of why you get bookings in the first place. And so obviously you can plan to put a lot of money in theming in Orlando. People have made tons of money doing that. They buy a house that's unthemed, theme it out, and then flip the Airbnb or the Vrbo property
Right.
based on upgrading the property. What I was specifically talking about, even if you do have it themed very well, you're meeting the expectations of, coming into a great environment of someone. If you're trying to manage remotely, some of the things that are difficult to provide those people is the one-on-one hospitality. So you've really got to have great people on the ground if you're going to manage remotely.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. All right. Let's talk a little bit about remotely. I'm gonna bring you back into the discussion, Matthew, because I think it's important for us to talk a little bit about what it is that you did initially in order to try to get out of the rat race, right? What were you doing? What was the first thing that you did to start trying to create passive income?
Well, first things first, and this kind of is an add to what Brent was saying about 401k. It was I took it a step further. Not only did I not continue contributing to my 401k, but I had to get that money out of there as quickly as possible. In some way, shape, or form, I was going to get that money out of there because it was dead in there. It was not doing me any good. And so along came the CARES Act during COVID-19. And the CARES Act actually was a huge positive for me because the one thing that always scared me was that 10% penalty. And in retrospect, it's such an insignificant thing. But before you actually pull the trigger on it and you see that 10% penalty, I wasn't even thinking about the tax implications on top of that. It was just that 10% penalty that was scaring the crap out of me to pull money out of my retirement accounts. And when the CARES Act, when the government in its infinite wisdom decided to eliminate that 10% penalty for a short time, I talked to my wife, Angie, and we decided that if we were ever going to do it, this was the time to do it. Because they just eliminated that one fear that I've always had. And so we pulled the maximum amount of our retirement accounts that we could under the CARES Act, and we were able to avoid that 10% penalty. And first we started our IBC journey with that money using the whole life insurance policies. And then funneling that from the whole life insurance policies, we ended up buying our first short-term rental in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. And ever since that, we've never looked back. And so I would say that that was the biggest catalyst was pulling that money out of the retirement account, taking it a step further so that we could start our investment journey, so that we weren't continually tied down with no capital to get started with.
Love that. And most people right now are like Googling CARES Act. Can I get my money out of my 401k using the CARES Act? And unfortunately, that time frame has passed. But there may be other options in the future. We'll have to see. So, Brent, I want to come to you. What was one of the first things that you did on your journey to getting out of the rat race to create passive income?
Yeah, so for me, it all started with learning about the infinite banking concept. Learning about that just kind of changed my life. One of my friends, Jeremiah Dew, was making some pretty vague posts on it back probably in 2018. And I just happened to kind of see those posts on Facebook and other social media and reached out to him like, hey, what are you doing? Can you explain this a little more to me? And, I think it just kind of the light bulb went off for me kind of immediately once he kind of explained what was going on with it. And so then not long after that, I saw him actually come down to the Wealth Without Wall Street offices, and he posted a picture from your old office. And, just the company name alone kind of, I was like, I need to go search that company name. I didn't even ask him anything. I just saw the picture. And so I searched, and that, led me to finding you guys, and started listening to the podcast, you guys started a community, obviously, joined that, and kind of the rest is history. So, the first thing, I guess, after the infinite banking concept, setting up that policy, I'd heard a podcast with Avery Carl that you guys had on. And she was just talking about Pigeon Forge and buying cabins up there. And then, the other kicker was you could buy them with 10% down instead of the typical 20-25% that you need on an investment loan. And, that really stuck out for me because I didn't have a lot of money to be able to put, $100,000 down on a property or, anything of that kind of size. So did the same thing as Matthew. It was right around when COVID had started, kind of perfect timing. So I was able to cash out my 401k, took everything out that I had in there, and that part really wasn't scary to me because it wasn't a lot of money anyway. So it's like, I'm not giving up retirement. This is not enough money to retire on anyway. So why not take a chance on something? And the rest is history. After that, invested in that one property. I was able to actually sell it earlier this year, and that's led to me being able to, get into a whole host of other investments.
Oh, so cool. I want to come back to those in a little bit. Let's jump over to Jonathan. What about you, Jonathan? What was that first step for you, trying to create passive income and getting out of the rat race?
Well, a lot of minor steps kind of along the way in my life. My dad really poured in a lot to me as far as financial education goes. It was maybe along a different track than what we typically talk about here. But my first big step, kind of that big marker that I would point to is selling our house in 2017. I said earlier that I just come to a moment. It was like I've got to do something different or this is unsustainable. And I knew just enough to be dangerous. And I knew that my house was worth more than I owed on it. And so I was like, all right, let's just sell the house. We'll get the money out. We'll downsize, and I'll have all this money to be able to use to, buy stuff, flip stuff, rent stuff. And so that's what we did. We downsized into a condo, like just basically down the street, with the plan of renting that condo later, after everything went spectacularly well, as I had planned it. Of course, stuff goes according to plan all the time.
Sure.
Just kidding, of course. But bought some rental properties, upgraded those, rented some, wholesaled some tax lien stuff, just kind of whacking at it, and learned a lot of hard lessons. There's a lot of things that we call passive income that's not actually passive whenever you are neck deep in it. That was the big thing that started it. Kind of another big boost, I would say, is exactly what those guys said. Come 2020, CARES Act rolled around. Hey, I've got all this money that I can use for something besides just sitting in an account. Don't have to pay the 10% penalty. And just like Matthew said, I was always scared of that. I was like, oh man, you'd lose all that money, and looking back on it, it's like, half a month's rent from a short-term rental, what I would have lost, so it was, you just don't know what you don't know, of course. And so that was just removed a barrier. So two things, I guess, to answer your question.
Well, and man, thank you guys for sharing that. I want to circle back to Matthew and Brent. You specifically brought up infinite banking, IBC. What would you say about infinite banking that was powerful? Like most people, that they don't have any sort of context. They're like, whole life insurance. Like I've always heard that that's boring. It's costly. It's not good for people. Like, how is that a part of your story to getting to success? Like, just make that a little bit clearer for somebody that's maybe never even heard of it from your perspective. Matthew, you start us off.
Well, I wish I could take credit for the idea of getting started in infinite banking, but I have to give the credit to Brent because he's the one that actually introduced me to it by letting me borrow Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And I know I referenced that in the previous episode where you guys interviewed me, and I read it over a weekend at the lake with my family, and the concepts, it just clicked for me. And it took, I was so excited to get started with it as soon as I read that book, that I was trying to relay that excitement to my wife and my son, and they just looked at me like I was an idiot because clearly they hadn't read the book. And so it took some time to at least educate mainly my wife. My son was going to go along whether he liked it or not, but Angie, when we actually decided to go through you guys' IBC 101 videos, and that's what really, Angie's a very visual person, and so that's what really clicked for her. And as soon as it clicked for both of us, we were ready to rock and roll. And the biggest draw for me was, I mean, obviously the obvious part is having control of your own money. You're not having to rely on banks for loans. You have money that you can use at any time for anything. And the insurance company, I mean, your cash value in your whole life policy is the collateral on the loan. So the insurance company has no reason to deny you a loan. So you request a loan on that cash value, and the only thing the insurance company asks is how much you want and where do you want us to send it. And so that kind of freedom is what was so exciting, because there was nothing holding us back at that point to be able to deploy that capital to investments at any time. I mean, an investment, I mean, you guys know that when you find a deal, I mean, you have to jump on it because somebody else will steal it away if you can't come up with the money in time. And so it was nice to not have to rely on the banks to underwrite loans and have to wait 30 to 60, sometimes 90 days before you can actually get the capital. And then by that time, the deal may or may not even be there anymore. And so to have that instant access to that cash was huge for us in getting that investment, in getting our investment strategy going. No doubt. And on top of that, you have a legacy that you can leave your kids, because I mean, whole life policies, yes, you have all that cash value, but you also have a death benefit. So, you know, I don't plan on dying anytime soon, but it's inevitable. And so, you know, it's nice to have that added bonus that I can actually leave a legacy to my wife and or son, you know, depending on how things work out. And so it's just a double bonus as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, there's 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and growth on cash value and whole life policies, right?
I don't know. I'll argue with you on the taxes part, but yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
I just read this comment. It was so drawing, Joey. I wanted to share it. I realized that my time is not really mine. It's my company's. Now I have to stop negotiating my time for money, and I need to start working to become financially free.
That's exactly how I felt when my daughter Adler asked me on the way to school, "Dad, can you pick me up from school today?" And I had to say, "No, baby, I have to go to work." That's where I drew the line.
In order for you to be clear on the things you need to do and stop doing, and to know who you need to become so that you can stop trading time for money, join us right now at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport.
Now let's get back to this episode.
So Brent, what about for you? You mentioned there was a light bulb moment whenever you started learning about infinite banking. What aspect or perspective did you see was such a benefit to you and your family?
Yeah, I think kind of simply, it was just, you know, it's kind of, for me, I've never been a great saver. And so just the simplicity of, you know, I'm going to be able to put money in this policy, and it's going to force me to save, because I'm not going to start this policy and then allow it to lapse and lose it. So I'm going to have to come up with money, no questions asked. And then, you know, I didn't know any of this at the time. I mean, yes, I heard the concepts, and, you know, but I didn't understand it because I wasn't doing any sort of investments at the time. But just, you know, the freedom of being able to go and take a policy loan when you need it to make an investment. You know, if you do enough of these investments and work with banks, you'll understand why it's so important, because all the paperwork that you have to go through for everything, you know, they'll come back the day before closing and say, "Oh, sorry, we can't close now. Something's changed." You know, there's just no certainty. And with the infinite banking policies, everything's in the contract. Nothing's going to change. So anytime I want the money, you know, it's the simple request, and I have the money within a couple of days. There's no bank that I've ever worked with that's been able to close on a loan that quick. And then on top of that, not having any kind of payback, I guess, period. They're not coming and saying, well, you've borrowed $10,000. Here's your payback schedule. That gives you a ton of freedom to be able to manage your cash flows. And when you're ready and able, you can pay them back. But if it's not next month, then it doesn't matter. And just the freedom in that, is just huge.
That's awesome. Jonathan, would you add anything to that? You didn't mention IBC, but I didn't want to assume one way or the other on that.
Yeah, so I'm in infancy on IBC stuff, trying to understand it. But my biggest advantage that I see based on my experience, I've already mentioned two of the situations already on the podcast, is just access to cash. I'm starting my investment journey, and my equity and my cash, my wealth or whatever is locked into my house. That doesn't put food on my table, or my savings, my cash, my wealth is locked into a government sponsored retirement plan, and that doesn't put food on my table. And so in one sense, the stress of that is good, because it's forcing me to think like, okay, there's got to be something different. I don't have access to this money. I've got to do something different. But if I had access to that cash, would I have, eaten it, so to speak? Maybe. I don't know. But whenever I got access to cash, of course, I was going down a path of, I've got to do something different. So that's the biggest advantage I see with IBC, is just having access to your stores of wealth to be able to create more.
I love that. All right, I'm gonna keep you on the hot seat, Jonathan. We're gonna reverse the order. It's like fantasy draft time here. You've been going last. I'm gonna, even though this isn't the second round, I'm gonna let this be a new round where you get to start. So we've kind of gone through a lot of discussions, right? Where you started, some of the action steps that you've taken, even your revelation on having access to cash and its importance. Talk a little bit, though, about the value of investing with these other guys, because it sounds like you two, you and these other two guys, are not doing things in silos. You're sharing information. I'm really curious as to that.
Well, I mean, we started because we were friends anyway. We've got a text group and we'll share funny memes all the time. We're Clemson football fans. And so we, so the relationship exists outside of passive income. But whenever, like your friend likes donuts, and so, hey, you want to go to the donut shop or the coffee shop, you kind of catch what your friends are doing, no matter what it is. And so, I was involved in one area of passive income stuff, and Brent was involved in another area, and we're talking, and he's listening to you guys, and I'm, listening to whoever. And so we're just sharing these ideas, and it just becomes kind of a boiler room of, hey, have you thought about this? Have you done this? Oh man, I could do that, And so we were actually out, alluding to the name of this podcast. We were at a wing place in Greenville, and Brent had invested in a short-term rental up in Pigeon Forge. I had heard Avery Carl, the same person that he mentioned earlier, on a different podcast. It was kind of like maybe that's something that I could go down. Maybe that's something that I could do. And we were eating wings. I want to say that Matthew had gotten up to go to the bathroom or something, and Brent was just staring at his screen, and sometimes you're thinking, oh man, there's two people here. We're sitting on the same side of the table, and he's ignoring me. And suddenly he goes, I can't believe how much people are paying to stay at my place. I'm like, what? And so he flashes his screen over at me with the numbers for the rest of the year. Like he had bought it maybe 2 weeks beforehand. And the number on that screen just blew my mind. And so I went home and told my wife, like, we have to do this. And I think within 3 days we were under contract on one in Tennessee. And so, I mean, that's just one example of, the people that you're doing life with, sharing life with. In a lot of ways you become like them. They're passing along ideas. It's inspiration in some senses. It's challenge. There's reminders. The other day, Matthew was like, "Oh man, I'm working on this particular thing, bank structure on my house or whatever." I'm like, "Oh man, I need to do that." So, so here I am, I'm kind of following suit. So there's ideas and challenge and reminders and all kinds of stuff, for me, I would say for them too. I don't want to answer for them, but it's kind of all a process of just sharing life with friends beyond. We didn't connect over investments and then become friends. It was the reverse for us.
That's very, very helpful, though. I mean, think about that, Brent. It seems like, everything happens around a plate of chicken wings. That's a saying I've heard you guys talk about. But also having other people around you who are thinking, I'm going to stop there. Use the word thinking. People around you who are thinking. There's so few people that are thinking. What's the value in your mind to have friend group that are helping you think and who are pushing you in areas maybe that you wouldn't do by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously invaluable. I remember before infinite banking came along, any of these investments came along, we used to talk about things like this and just talk about, man, what would it look like to be financially free? How awesome would that be? And just having those discussions, late on a Thursday night or whatever night we're meeting. And so I vividly remember having those discussions. And so it's awesome to kind of see that come to fruition. And, I'm the youngest of the group, but I kind of feel like a proud parent. I didn't ever expect to be in that position of, just by me sharing things with them, being able to help, change their families' lives as well. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, the money's nice, being able to do the things with my family's nice, but also seeing other people able to come along for the ride is also awesome as well. So it's just, it's been fun to kind of see, I remember us talking when we didn't have a clue what we were going to do, what this looked like in the future to where we are now, where we, all have well-defined plans of, where we see ourselves going.
I love that. So good. Now, what about you, Matthew? What's your unique take on investing with friends and being in a group that can mastermind? And I know that you follow the lead on some of these guys, but also you kind of led the way in another regard as it takes into the passive income mastermind as well.
Yeah. So these guys may not have the same mentality I do with regard to this, but I am hyper competitive. It's almost on an unhealthy level. I would say the only person that's more competitive than me is my wife, and so just forget just forget about coming to game night with my wife and I, because you will not have any fun, I promise you. But in all seriousness, though, my competitiveness, I love having Brent and Jonathan as my core group for investments, because as much as I cheer them on in their successes, I'm also competing with them, not in a hostile way by any means. It's just a friendly competition. It's like, oh, okay, well, Brent's at this level now and this investment, and this is where I want to be. So I need to step up my game. Or Jonathan's, man, he just bought another house. I need to step up my game. So it's that competitive nature in myself that helps me drive my investments. And so I cheer them on, man. I want them to stay ahead of me in a lot of aspects, because all that does is just motivate me more. I don't want to get to the point where like I'm at the finish line and waiting for them to catch up. I want to be the one that's trying to catch up the entire time, because if I ever pass them and make it to that that hypothetical finish line, then the drive's gone, and I want to keep that drive. I want to keep that motivation. So I love having our close knit group and being able to bounce ideas off of each other and learning what they're doing, so that I can see if it's a good fit for me, so that I can continue that race.
Well, that's not what Jonathan told me. He told me on sidebar at the mastermind retreat, dude, Matthew's a little unsafe. Like he's a little hostile about this whole competition thing, just so you know. And I was like, man, I got your back. Like I'll watch out for you. But but you alluded to this earlier, Russ, but so Matthew, you led the way by joining the mastermind. Talk a little bit about what that's meant for you, and then maybe how that was been shared within the group as well.
Yeah. So, well, full disclosure, joining the mastermind was not my attempt at getting a lead on Brent and Jonathan. I was just blessed to be able to go to your guys' retreat in Austin, Texas, earlier this year, and just just being in the same room as all of those, all of those masters of industry, for lack of a better word. I mean, they're just being in that group of knowledge and being able to tap into it. And the fact that everybody in that mastermind is not, regardless of how successful they are at their individual races, they're all so humble and they're so willing to share what they've learned, the mistakes they've made. My philosophy is if I'm the smartest person in the room, then I'm in the wrong room. So, and I definitely was not the smart, and I still am not the smartest person in the room when it comes to that passive income mastermind. And I love it because I can just soak up all of that brilliant knowledge that a lot of those guys share on a daily basis, whether on the retreats or through our weekly or biweekly calls, or even through the our chat messaging. Man, I just love soaking up all that information. And so when I got out of that retreat, I just knew instantly, man, I need to join the mastermind so that I can, the retreat was great. The retreat was fantastic, but I can't limit this just once or twice a year. I need to be able to do this on a regular basis. And so when I joined the mastermind, I was able to actually tap into that knowledge on a regular basis. It's just skyrocketed my potential and my drive to succeed.
And that's awesome to know. So Brent, you and Jonathan are on the back end of that retreat. How did you talk about what did he come back and say? Like, you guys got to join tomorrow. Like what was the conversation like after he came back from that retreat?
Yeah, no, he definitely talked about the awesome speakers that were there, and I definitely regretted not going. I was thinking about going and kind of talked myself out of it, and obviously that was a mistake. I could have been 6 months further along than I am now, so I should have just joined then and stopped thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, he has had nothing but great things to say about it. The topics that you guys were discussing, he would mention those, and yeah, I mean, it was just it was a no-brainer. I mean, it was really for me, it was just kind of the natural next step. I've been part of the inner circle for a couple of years, and with the sale of the cabin and the other investments, I mean, it's just really kind of catapulted me to where I think ready to be in the next level. And so yeah, it was a no-brainer. It was just yeah.
And what has it meant for you to be a part of the mastermind now?
Again, just being around people that are a lot further along than I am. Just seeing what it's going to take to get to the next level. I mean, it's I've made it to one level. I'm not satisfied at that level. I'm happy I'm there, but I've got a lot of work to do to get to the next level. And just having people that have made that transition, that can guide me instead of me trying to figure it out, is going to save years and a lot of money, hopefully, so I'm not investing in things that I shouldn't be investing in and having to learn the hard way by losing a bunch of money before knowing what's the next right thing.
So Brent, you obviously were at our Scottsdale event. What would be one takeaway that you could share with someone listening right now that you had? Like we had many different speakers, right? We had a member day where we went deep on some subjects, and we had 2 other days. What was the biggest takeaway that you've brought home that you shared with your wife that you said, hey, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, so the 2 biggest was obviously, I think I had mentioned this there. I'm kind of on I've been on a health journey for the last couple of months. So hearing Justin speak, that was huge. I've had several conversations with him. And, a lot of people don't talk about it, but the health side of things is just as important as the financial side of things. If I don't have the health right, I'm not going to be here long enough to enjoy it anyway. So I've got to get both of those things right. So that was a huge talk. And then also you guys talking about the operating system that you guys use. And, when I started Infinite Banking, that was a lot, most of the policies that I've started, that was before I started doing all the passive income. And so those things have kind of gotten out of balance. I haven't been doing what I needed to as far as, taking some of this passive income and building bigger policies and, doing that process correctly. So I need to get those balanced back out. So those were the two big takeaways from the event for me.
I love that. Yeah. What's the old Chinese proverb that a man who has his health have 1,000 wants, but a man without health only has one. So that's a great takeaway. I love that.
Yeah.
Jonathan, what about you as far as your take on joining the mastermind? Like, how was that decision easy? Was it hard? Like, what was been your experience as a result?
I wrestled with it for a little while. It is a financial investment, but the benefits have already, and I'm expecting, of course, to outweigh that. Just to echo what they've said, just being around people, I've experienced it. And, of course, being a pastor, I understand, the power of an idea. It's the implanted word in our minds and our hearts that is, works an explosive power. And that, there's a particular word, that I preach on Sundays, but there's all sorts of information that, as we receive the knowledge, we also receive the power as it changes us. And so that's one of the awesome things about, doing life with these guys. There's ideas flying everywhere. I can go ask, hey, what do you think about this? Here's my situation. What do you think? They've got ideas. And whenever Matthew came back from the passive income retreat in Austin, we had been talking about taxes. We had been talking about, long-term rental holding. There were several questions that I had, that he had found some answers to. He was able to repeat. And then at the same time, it was like, man, I wish I'd have been there, to hear the actual thing. And so, from the passive income retreat in Austin until the passive income retreat in Scottsdale, a lot of the knowledge that was imparted to Matthew, Brent and I have been able to take advantage of. And, for me, it's like, well, man, if I can benefit this much from hearing a few things kind of secondhand, how much more could I benefit if I had the networking, the relationships, if I can, talk with people like Mark Podolsky, I can talk with people like Russ and Joey, on a more personal level. And the same way that I'm talking with Matthew and Brent, kind of have that access to the knowledge. And going back to my earlier story, I sold my house. If I knew what I knew now, I would have taken a massively different journey. The knowledge is what I would say makes the difference. Really the action makes the difference, because whenever you act, you're going to gain knowledge one way or the other. But, if I had some prior knowledge, man, I could have saved myself such heartache. So that's what I'm excited about when it comes to the passive income mastermind.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a pleasure to hear you guys sharing. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom, right? We could have just continued and pulled this out when you have a group like yourselves who has taken massive action and are sharing with each other, not being scarce with information, right? Sometimes that challenge mentality, Matthew, the willingness or desire to win sometimes comes at the expense of, okay, I'm going to do these things and I'm not going to tell my friends about it so I can get so far ahead, right? It's one thing to want to win, but at the same time, you're doing it in a way, well, I want to win big, because when these guys learn something, then they're going to do something at a greater level, and it's going to challenge me to have to do something at a greater level. And you start standing on the shoulders of people that are a lot taller than you, right? I see that. I think that's huge. I think thank you guys so much for being willing to share with our community, being a part of the inner circle, and now going into the Passive Income Mastermind. I'm excited what the journey is going to look like for you. And I know as you're listening to this, maybe you have a group like these gentlemen have where you meet with somebody on a regular basis and you have these conversations. If you're not, then I challenge you right now to go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call and ask one of our coaches, how can you get in a group that can help level you up? That could be someone where you can not only receive information that you didn't have before, but also start sharing those experiences and gaining that action that Jonathan just talked about as it pertains to how do I get more passive income than monthly expenses. All right, Stallion, I'm gonna let you wrap it up. Final thought.
My final thought, or do you want me to get everybody else's final thought?
Your final thought.
My final thought is, man, be a part of a community, right? We talk about that within the Wealth Without Wall Street world, but man, this is a micro community. And I got to be honest, this is a power group, right? This is a power group within the overall community because they not only show up, they not only invest in themselves by hearing information, but then they take action and they apply it at the you and me level, right? At the personal level. And that has made a massive difference. I mean, we didn't get into all of the details today, and I think it'd be great to have more conversation with these guys offline, or if you look them up in the community, I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you. But man, the results that they've seen within a couple of years is what most people look for in 10 plus years. Like they have literally collapsed time. And if that's you, it doesn't have to be super difficult, but man, you got to find your tribe. If it's not Wealth Without Wall Street, find it somewhere else. But if it is, join the inner circle, join the mastermind, and let's go deep, let's go fast and get you, because your family is worth it, right? Your passions are worth it. They're waiting for you to create the passive income to exceed your monthly expenses, and you can do it with your tribe. All
right, gentlemen, I have one last question for you, and it's one word answer only. Okay, that's how we're going to finish it.
No pressure.
No pressure. So I'm going to start with you, Brent. So here's your question. In one word, sum up what the future looks like based upon what you have gained so far.
Freeing.
Freeing.
I love it. What a great word.
Matthew.
Hope.
Hope. How about for you, Johnson? What's one word that sums up what the future looks like now based upon the information you have?
I'm going to go with joyful.
Joyful. I love it. All right. Well, there's opportunity for each one of you, if you don't have a group like this, to join and also to come back and listen to the next podcast where you can also start gaining insights that maybe be the breaking point for you, where Joey and I are interviewing you in the future to talk about the things that you learned and what you're off to now and what that future looks like. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate having you. Always a great conversation. And thank you for listening. If you haven't had a time to do it yet, take the chance right now to let us know on your podcast app how we're doing. Rate, review the show. That's how others find us. And we appreciate you. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.